We're here.
Hello.
Good evening.
Hi, all. Welcome. Monday night, Generational Change. I'm Jen.
I'm Peter.
And a few new things. Well, first of all, new backdrop.
So we had to look presentable for that.
It's a new backdrop, so very fancy. It looks so good. This is how it was always meant to look. For anybody who doesn't know, I collect antique shutters, right? And so these shutters used to be on my dining room wall of my last house, but never in as good of an arrangement. And our handyman said, who is extremely handy, also apparently has an eye for artistic stuff here because he did it better than I did it at my last house. But anyway, I digress.
I think it worked out pretty well.
Yeah. No, it's good. And they don't fit in the new house, so it works out well. So I just want to get this out before because our guest Steve had texted me that I used the name Economic Hunger Games for our promo ad, but that I put it in quotes because I know that's the show Jordan Sheridan's doing. And ironically, just watching him now, he said in passing, he thinks he's changing the name of that series.
I guess we'll just have to scoop it.
We're just going to no, I'm not trying to steal it. I like it. That's why I put it in quotes. So it is a Jordan Sheridan phrase. All right. That's that. But it is, I think it's good. And what's funny is though, my kids, I would explain things to them like the Hunger Games, trying to explain. I'd be like, just be thankful that you get to live in District 1, and you're not stuck in District 12, which is, like Yemen and Haiti and that's District 12. And that's it. That's all you could, and then, everyone aspires to get into the capital. And they totally understood that. It was really interesting.
I will tell you that a friend of the show, David Dole, he did a segment today where basically British TV, which I guess is like Good Morning Britain, Good Morning America, same deal. They basically had a segment with a climate activist, and it was directly out of Don't Look Up. Like it was like copied point for point. Do you not understand? You're not supposed to inconvenience people when they're going to work. You do it on your own time. And this lady's like sitting there like Jennifer Lawrence thinking like,
we're all gonna die.
Like, who gives a shit? Like we're all dead. So we've got a lot of issues going on right now.
Oh yeah. And we are an hour earlier. And so, that means we get done an hour earlier.
That's true too. I mean, obviously we want to be able
right? I know. And you're no longer going to see the wavy, trippy, moving brick wall anymore.
Yeah. We're just checking our audio at the moment. Can they hear us before they come into the studio? Could that possibly
Yeah, they used to. They did. But the other people can hear us. Nobody said they can't, right?
I don't think so. This is interesting.
Okay, that's not good. All right, well.
Try again.
It's not good, Steve. I don't think it's on our end.
And back in.
Yeah. So we're going to talk to Steve in a minute about a lot of different things. But do you want to have like a guest? Do you have a guest?
I have a very important announcement, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that are here.
Can I not be in the picture? Do I need to be in the picture?
Because it's up to you.
Okay.
You want to slide?
I'm just going to move over a little bit.
Fine.
That's what I'm doing.
It's very important that I came this evening.
Ew.
My fellow Americans, I just wanted to tell you about a very important development that happened today. Really incredible. I made a very important decision about the Senate race in Pennsylvania, the state that made me president in 2016. I totally am endorsing Dr. Mehmet Oz. He's a great guy, tremendous person, really believe in him because, like me, he plays an incredible character on TV. He's going to make a wonderful...
Who does he play on? He's himself.
Yeah,
Dr. Oz?
Oh, he's playing a doctor on TV.
He is a doctor.
No, he's not really a doctor. He just plays one. But
oh my God.
He's totally going to be great, and he's making America great again.
Again.
And we're going to totally take back the Senate. And you know what we're going to do? Jen, you know what we're going to do? It's going to be really incredible. I'm letting everybody here know exactly what's happening in the midterms right now. It's really great. We're going to take back that. I'm allergic to that. Don't do that again. You've totally messed up my head. I can't think straight anymore.
You've messed up all our heads.
But we're going to take back the House. We're going to take back the Senate. And believe me when I tell you, the GOP is going to impeach President Biden. It's going to be great.
and he totally deserves it. Did you hear about the laptop? The laptop was true. Remember when Leslie Stahl said I was lying? I was totally telling the truth. Now let's pretend like nothing happened with Jared Kushner's $2 billion deal with Prince bin Salman. It's totally not happening. You totally didn't see that. But believe me, the Hunter Biden story, much more important, really great. And we're going to totally take it back. We're going to make America great again.
Again.
So it's great to see you all. Remember, support Mehmet Oz. If you're in Pennsylvania, John Fetterman is a terrible person. He wants to give people health care, take care of the environment, and give them a living wage. He's totally out of his mind. We want to have.
Wow, that's radical.
No, it's totally crazy. Totally crazy. We can't have that. So what we totally need is to bring on a really great doctor who can tell you what you need to hear, and then you can fix your problem yourselves. Isn't that great? It sounds wonderful. So that's what's going to happen. Believe me when I tell you, we're coming back. We'll see you later.
My only concern is somebody coming on for that clip, just hearing those words, and then that is the name that sticks with them. No, Fetterman.
Yeah, Fetterman.
Fetterman.
Yeah, Fetterman.
I just don't want, like, somebody come on, hear that clip. Oh, we're supporting Oz. I'm like, no, we're not.
So with that follow-up conversation, we will now welcome in our wonderful guest, who is he's a series regular. We call him a series regular.
Well, but I did get all pretty today.
Ah, well, he appreciates it.
I got stood up by the last person I got all pretty for, so I'm happy now.
Well, treat her well, Steve. That's all I can say. He is the host of the Macro and Cheese podcast and leads the charge.
And a Rogue Scholar, and has the Rogue Scholar. It's like a lunchtime. It's like at noon, I believe, and it's very good. It's concise.
Yeah, wonderful. Steve Grumbine, welcome back to Generational Change.
Hi.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys.
Absolutely. No, thanks for coming on. It's always good to have you on. I really did think you were a single dad, and you are not. You are accountable to a lady friend. That's unfortunate for you, sir. You aren't as free as you could be. I'm just checking.
Now we have to check in.
It definitely limits my availability for things.
Right, and you have a little one. I didn't realize you had a little one. I mean, I knew your kids were, I thought you had like two. For some reason, I thought you had boys that were like in the 9 to 12 range.
Well, I have, hold on.
List, right?
I have 9 kids. So between 5 boys and 4 girls, there's a little bit in there for everyone.
Oh,
Really sound like you're Pennsylvania Dutch.
Wow, that's a lot, man.
Yes, I'm just a multi-time loser on the marriage front, so hopefully I get it right this time.
Right, it wasn't on purpose. You didn't decide you were going to go forth and procreate at that level as a young age.
No,
right?
I mean, I love baseball, don't get me wrong, but I just didn't plan on creating a baseball team.
I was just going to say you have enough kids to fill a diamond. So
That's a lot of kids.
Absolutely.
That's a lot of kids.
Add me in when you got a DH, right? Player, coach, whatever.
I love baseball. I know you think it's like paint drying.
I'd rather watch paint dry than watch baseball. I find it incredibly boring.
Yeah, not going to.
It's definitely one of those sports that needed to be passed down to you by someone. I mean, I really do believe it is one of the few sports that is not going to just grab you, that somebody has to give it to you and give you the lore and give you the history and make it part of your person. And my dad did do that. In fact, it's interesting. I was digging around. My dad gave me a bunch of his baseball cards. Is what his parting gift to me. And so I'm in the process of evaluating how much of that is going to stay passed on, and some of that might be, hey, how many can fill the bills? But I also found a baseball bat that he gave me when I was a little boy, and it is splintered up and down the side from me hitting a tree, because that's how they taught you to hit back when you were a kid. And so just a lot of flooded memories. Baseball's a great sport. Even if you don't get it from yourself, I'll help you. I'll pass it on.
Well, you know what? And it's interesting you say that it's something that's passed on. So growing up here, we didn't have a team until after I left for college. We didn't have a team. So my dad grew up here. So, and these are not athletic people that we're talking about. So the only team that nobody played anything. That's the other thing about baseball, is that a lot of people that like it also have played it. So we only had the Dolphins. That was the menu. So we never grew up and just in general, Florida is just not when I was growing up.
Wait a minute, hold on. Isn't Florida, aside from Arizona, isn't Florida like home to every single spring training there is in baseball?
But up in the middle of the state, like
Tallahassee kind of thing, Gainesville.
Well, it's just in the center.
The furthest south is West Palm Beach. But
nobody. It's just not a thing here. Baseball is not a thing. There's no teams that people growing up, like we just didn't have that.
No, people down here really just care about
football and basketball.
Care about football and basketball. They obviously love the Miami Hurricanes, and obviously if the Dolphins are doing well, if the Dolphins do well, then everybody's out here.
I'm a real Dolphins fan.
Well, you've got a lot to get excited about this year. I mean, I feel bad for Flores, but they brought Tyreek Hill in. They did a bunch of really good work. So
it's funny, Flores saying that this is, that Stephen Ross is
that's our problem right there.
Yeah, the owner of the Dolphins is like, oh, he's a cheapskate. He doesn't really want to win. He's just trying to make money. And the next thing you know, he's like, oh, crap, I better cover my trail. I'm going to spend money on the best wide receiver in the NFL. That'll show him.
Well, for a while, I thought it was like that movie. What was it, Major League, where they're like trying to fail? They want them to fail because they want, like, for the longest time, I thought that about him. We went through how many coaches in how many years? I think we had a new coach every year. You cannot win like that. Like, that's not a way to win. You cannot win like that. The coaches that win have consistency. Like, you cannot just have new coaches every year and expect to do anything.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that. That's good.
Oh, every one of these has a story. There's post-Hurricane Katrina. I have some that are out of like old Victorian Massachusetts. Like there's some old stuff in here. Yeah, there's a story here. So I like that. But
speaking of stories, the Donald Donnelly got involved in your Senate race today, and it's really great, really incredible.
He really did endorse Ops. That really happened?
It happened this afternoon.
Oh my God.
So the good news is that the one person who I do think could flip the state blue is leading by a wide margin.
That's so good.
John Fetterman. Really great news. Obviously, if Malcolm Kenyatta were to endorse Fetterman, that would effectively end the race. But I guess from what we are seeing, Conor Lamb just continues to shoot himself in the foot. And, the one thing, Steve, that would be, I think, just like a great starting point. One thing I will give Conor Lamb credit for, he doesn't pretend like he is anything but a corporate whore of the highest order. He is more bought out than probably Mehmet Oz would.
But he owns it.
Yeah, he does. He doesn't. He hates progressives, like hates them.
You know what? I gotta tell you, I have a certain amount of respect for that, though. I do. At least
I get it. I get it.
Be who you are. I would never support said person, and I'm sure I disagree with him on everything philosophically, but I respect somebody owning their crap.
I respect the hell out of it.
And I'm sure you would agree. The sad truth is that between Conor Lamb and Mehmet Oz, you really don't know who would potentially do something good for people in the Senate. Like, you really don't know. Like, it's not like, oh, well, he's a Republican, so he'll be worse. No, honestly, between the two of them, if you told me that Dr. Oz, it's amazing what our society has devolved into. If he were to be a U.S. Senator, I would actually expect more from him for the people than Conor Lamb. Tell me I'm wrong, Steve. Convince me I'm wrong with that statement.
I can't convince you you're wrong. I really cannot. A few years back, the Green Party tried to get me to run against Bob Casey. And I was excited. I was thinking about it. They did this whole big draft Grumbine for Senate. And the problem was the Green Party doesn't really support their actual candidates. They do, but they don't. There's no financial support. There's no infrastructure. So you're really on your own to do your entire race, top to bottom. And it was just way too much. But the more you look at the state, this place is a very purple place. We're not talking about red. We're not talking blue. We're talking about real honest to God, hardcore beards and guns. And they tell the calendar by when the hunting season is going on. Everything here is very different, and it's not normal. Like, when I say not normal, there's a lot of places that like hunting. Pennsylvania is truly the deer hunter state. It is absolutely straight out of the movie Deer Hunter, even today. And so it's kind of weird because you figure a lot of those folks are blue collar workers that would have union mindedness to them and would be more labor solidarity. but it's just kind of a weird place. It's very much Trump country. There's still Trump banners all around here. So I wouldn't get too excited, to be perfectly fair. I would not get too excited about any progressive running in this state, because it is very, very, very hard to tell who is who. Nobody wears that clean, I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat. I mean, it's a very, very strange kind of mixed place. So it's always a toss up.
I wish that's just how it was. I don't need to know what somebody's party affiliation is. You know, like if you tell me what you stand for, then you could call yourself whatever you want to call yourself. Like that's just like made up labels. So, you know, but if we're talking about Dr. Oz, I'd prefer Dr. Phil. Like I prefer Dr. Phil to Dr. Oz.
You are an idiot.
No, I like Dr. Phil. I do. I don't care. You can hate him if you want. I do not hate Dr. Phil.
Thanks, Oprah. But what I do think is very relevant here is the fact that Fetterman is a different kind of, well, it's not even that he's a different kind of Democrat. He's a throwback Democrat. He's that blue. I mean, listen, he is not from a piss poor background, but he has very blue collar sensibilities. He's a big guy. He takes absolutely no crap. And that, quite frankly, is that fighting spirit, that working class fighting spirit that the Democratic Party had prior to Ronald Reagan. And it's basically just been going downhill ever since then. And if there is a state that's going to buck the trend, I think a state like Pennsylvania is the one that's going to do
what
it.
What do I know him from? Like, what was he?
He's the lieutenant governor of Pennsylvania.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so going back to Bernie 1.0, right?
Yeah.
Fetterman was running for office, and everybody kind of thought he was a Bernie-crat, and everybody thought that Bernie was going to endorse him, and Bernie didn't endorse him, and that was a real kick in the gut for a lot of people.
Bernie made a lot of missteps along the way, unfortunately.
Yes, and then when Wolf went running, then he became the lieutenant governor of Pennsylvania. And so I'm interested to see, because Wolf had his moments where you said, oh, maybe he's not a complete corporate stooge. Because if you look at the Republicans in the state, they are straight up batshit crazy. I mean, we're not talking about minor league crazy here. We are talking about dyed in the wool lunatic fringe. And so when you look at a guy like Fetterman coming in there, working with a guy like Wolf, I wonder whether he's still the Bernie crap. I mean, he's a weed guy. He likes his pot. I mean, he's a guy that would definitely be supportive of 420. But overall, I'm very interested to see who John Fetterman is today, as opposed to who he was when he ran back in the early Bernie days.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's fair. People definitely evolve in the wrong direction, or devolve. They do, but still could be a better option than a corporate whore.
Dr. Phil, are we still talking about Dr. Phil?
No.
Oh my goodness.
Dr. Phil. Look, I don't care if you ever watched his show. Like, if you watch his show, he always really does give like sound, reasonable advice. He does. And more importantly, he doesn't claim to do anything other than hook people up with services. That's the other thing. Like, that's the majority of what he does, is refer people to organizations and stuff. It's not like he claims he cures people.
Yeah, it's a good networking gig if you can get it. It's been very rich.
I remember when where he came from was he was basically Oprah's jury consultant back when Oprah was being sued by the cattle ranchers in Texas. I happened to be living there at the time. And he was in, part of this case was in our courtroom in San Antonio, and he was there. And that was when he was her jury expert. It's just kind of interesting. So, you know.
We got a lawyer here.
Well, I was a clerk. I wasn't in the courtroom, but yeah, he was at my courthouse. Let's just say.
When is the primary again?
You're asking the wrong guy. For real, the best part about this is I genuinely don't care. I genuinely don't care. I don't believe that any of them are going to really make the kind of change that we need. I don't hear policy-wise. I don't hear the kinds of things that I need to hear. I don't see the kind of structure in the state of Pennsylvania that is going to make radical change. And obviously he's not running, Fetterman's not running for a local Senate race. He's running for national. So whatever amount of, you can guarantee he'll vote the party line. He won't cross lines. That's one thing you can guarantee with Fetterman. He's not going to be a Joe Manchin. But on the flip side of that, in this state, any kind of state-run thing, I mean, in this, it literally is a crapshoot. It really is. I mean, anything that's going to happen in the state of Pennsylvania, this place is so foobar. I swear to God. I mean, I just show up on voting day because none of these people, none of them represent. Yeah, is Florida the same way?
I feel
There's a difference.
We're the
Florida
most
has-
ridiculous joke. All the craziest crap happens here. We're Florida. Oh my God.
People think things are bad now with DeSantis, and I'm like, no, actually, they're not that bad at all. We had Rick Scott for 8 years, and the kind of things that he did to this state that
Seriously.
you're still feeling now.
He should be in prison.
Oh yeah, absolutely, he should be.
He should be in
He's a
prison.
literal criminal, and unfortunately, what we're dealing with here is, at least in Pennsylvania, there's a real working class fighting spirit that exists there. I mean, I'm from New Jersey, so I know Pennsylvania very well, and that is a mark of what the true Rust Belt, Mid-Atlantic region of the country is all about. There is this mixture. Pennsylvania and Wisconsin are very similar in a lot of ways, and you have these sort of extremes, if you will, where there is this really progressive streak, but there's also this really hardcore libertarian streak. Like you said, it's like something out of Deliverance, and that's why friend of the show Mark Fabian says it's Pennsylvania to the east, Pittsburgh to the west, and Pennsylvania in the middle, and there really there's a lot of truth to that. So having that eclectic mix, I think, is very beneficial if you could have somebody like Fetterman. But what is infinitely more important, which is one of the big things we wanted to talk about, is the only way this is going to change for all of us is if there is a rabid outside movement centered on labor. And it looks like it's starting to take shape. And with obviously friend of the show, Chris Smalls' victory in Staten Island for the Amazon Labor Union, I mean, we thought that what happened up with the Starbucks workers in Buffalo was big, but that is nothing compared to this. I mean, this is a touchstone point that we could be talking about a generation from now.
Yeah.
And now little unions are springing up all over the place as a result.
There's little unions springing up. It's
Yeah.
so exciting.
Jordan Sheridan has been boots on the ground with this thing from day one. I want to make sure I give a big shout out to Jordan, because he has done the work that nobody was interested in because it wasn't a sure thing. Once it became a sure thing, everybody jumped in the middle of it. But he was there when it was just a smattering. And I do have the luxury of talking to a friend who actually runs a nice little weed bar, I guess, in New York City, who gets to spend time with Christian and that whole gang. And so she gets the real skinny over coffee and pipe smokes, and so ultimately it's just really a very powerful story. I hats off to them for taking on a huge Golgothan massive juggernaut and kicking its ass. I mean, it's fantastic. It is the only way forward. I mean, I was sitting there doing a live stream earlier today talking about how, obviously my key subject being MMT, I talk about the possibilities that are there. But then I pivoted, did a hard pivot to say, but explain to me why none of this possibility is coming true. Why is none of this possibility coming true? Because everybody wants to organize within the parties, and the parties are controlled. They are not going to let anything that goes outside of what they really want to happen. So it's got to be outside of the party system, whether anybody likes to hear that or not. If it burns their ears, get over it. It's got to happen outside of the parties. And it's not so much a third party so much as it is a place that doesn't have that control apparatus that the parties put on the thought of the people, where we can actually take and make our message known, have power and strength, and force the parties to do our bidding, force our government to listen. And without that countervailing force, we really are looking at something that requires revolution, some form of revolution, because we are literally being lulled to sleep. It's kind of like if you ever kneaded dough, you know how the outside part of the dough is, well, it's the outside part of the dough until you curl it in. That's what the Democratic Party does. It just rolls your ideas and all that stuff inside and buries it away inside some like hyper, soundproof dough, and you don't get an ounce of anything out of it. All you do is you're like banging. You're trying to wonder why you're in the soft padded dough room. And the reality is it's just the Democratic Party putting you in a sleeper hold. And so if we don't have that labor union, and we've been talking about this since Sarah Nelson came on my program last year. Actually, I think it was right before Biden got elected, actually. Right after he had received the nomination. It was in that transition period where the Bernie people were meeting with the Biden people, and they were kind of trying to put it all together,
Yeah, we're going to take that into consideration. We'll take that under advisement.
Exactly. Well,
right.
when she came on to our Sarah Nelson came on to our program, she had talked about how the only way forward is through some means of labor unions uniting. And I really believe that. I've come to believe that we, the people, are not capable of doing it on our own without leaders of some variety. And leaders could be us, but that's where the union comes in. That's where this kind of labor movement comes in, because it stops being about parties and it starts being about your core needs, your core class struggle, who you are in the class, hierarchy and such. And I think that if we have some class awareness and we have that class struggle through a labor movement, through unionization, and through us just recognizing that if you earn a paycheck, you're labor. I don't care whether that's a huge paycheck or a little paycheck, you're still labor. You're still working for the man. And at that point in time, that's the 99% that needs to unite together. If we do that, we might have a shot, but I don't think we have a shot. Keep rolling ourselves back in like dough into the Democratic Party. I mean, vote Democrat, do whatever you're going to do. I mean, Fetterman's a Democrat, et cetera. I'm not here to say don't vote, but I am here saying stop putting all your eggs in the electoral basket. It's got to happen through labor unions. That's why I'm so excited about what happened at Amazon.
Yeah, we always say that that's the kind of the connection that ties everyone together is the unions and workers. Labor, not unions. But another thing that we are, that we promote is nonpartisan local races, because that's another way that we can assert what we want to assert and go outside of the party paradigm. And yet it's still in electoral politics. Like you get people like Kashama Sawant, you get people that are in positions that they wouldn't be able to get in beyond the local level. And that's another way to be outside the party, because third party, it's not something that's happening. It's just not something that's happening. And I'm supportive of the idea, but it's not reality. Come election time, that's not what's on my option list. That's not on my menu.
Well, there's no third party candidates. I mean, look what the Democrats did to the Green Party in Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, we not only couldn't vote for Howie Hawkins, but the entire Green Party was kept off the ballot. I mean, it was ridiculous. And you think about the fact that they were actually celebrating. I brought this up. I can't read Addie Barkin, I think his name is.
Yes.
Addie. Yeah, I'm sorry. I know people celebrate this guy because his story is like painful, but that jackass was literally celebrating keeping the Green Party off the ticket. And I couldn't believe my ears. I was like, you guys think this guy's like a decent human being? What? That's disgusting to me. His literal celebration was keeping the Greens off the ballot.
Well, anybody who celebrates things like that are extreme. I mean, he's a very white privileged individual who just happens to have a progressive streak. That's nice and all, but it's no different than when people complain about how come you're not giving Joe credit or Biden credit for doing this or that or anything like that? Because people who work are the reason why anything is successful. There is this massive amounts of, I hate to say it, but penis envy for the wealthy in this country. And it's a huge problem. But I think a lot of people are really starting to wake up to it now. I think that, as I always maintained, and I've been telling Jen this for a while, is that I thought somebody like Bezos in particular was going to bite off more than he could chew. And they decided to race bait Chris Smalls on top of completely give away the game regarding what they were intending to do and how they were going to scare people into not actually attempting to unionize. We saw what happened in Bessemer, Alabama.
Yeah.
And I do think that because of what happened in Bessemer, that Chris and his team learned and probably were communicating with them and saying, this is what they're going to do. This is what they're going to pull. Make sure that you counter that with X, Y, and Z. And now that it's been done, I mean, you now have a legitimate labor movement that is brewing in this country. And perhaps, I still maintain that I think Bernie made a lot more mistakes in 2020 than he did in 2016. If Bernie had the type of labor movement that was brewing at that time, like it is right now, I think he would be president, because I think there were way too many labor blocks that got in his way, particularly Randy Weingarten of the teachers union and a number of others that, had he gotten that endorsement, could have really made the difference on the margins. Do you see that probably being the case, depending on who they ultimately run in 24?
Here's what I see. I see somebody got in Bernie's ear. He changed, basically lanes. In 2016, he was asking to see the transcripts and see the, all the stuff that she had done for JP Morgan and all the other, people, the companies that she should have never been in front of, Goldman Sachs, you name it. And there she is like, that was Bernie Sanders 1.0. Bernie Sanders 2.0 adopted half of Hillary's campaign team and tried to become an establishment friendly candidate. He tried to, basically out centrist them. And it clearly, even though people were still rooting for Bernie, I mean, he won early and often. It was quite clear that they weren't going to allow that to happen. Once they started seeing the freight train moving, the establishment crushed in. I imagine whoever runs in the next election is going to have to toe the company line as well. They're not going to allow someone that doesn't fit within their little soiree, their little clique. It's not going to happen. And so I fully expect the Democrats to try and trot out someone like Kamala. I know that talk is out there of Ro Khanna, but Ro Khanna has, I met Ro Khanna years ago at a Millions for Medicare rally on the South Lawn of the Capitol. And we had Nina Turner, we had Margaret Flowers, we had other people there. But when I met Ro Khanna, in that moment, he hadn't been tainted, he hadn't been spoiled yet. He was definitely a Silicon Valley guy, no question about it. But he's very tall, very stately, had a very majestic kind of grip. I hate to make it out to be very, very kingly kind of effect. I mean, he was very striking feature. I mean, he was probably 6'4", really, really snazzy guy, very well put together. Easily could have kept a room going. I mean, he had that kind of presence about him. Yeah. But now I'm watching him, and as much as it would have been nice to see more lefties. I mean, early on he was talking MMT. Stephanie Kelton was propping him up as like, oh, this guy really gets it. He was putting her over AOC, etc. But I've seen a whole lot more Roe being a whole lot more establishment friendly lately. And that could all be a ruse. That could be just the games people play. But I have seen way too much of that for people to feel comfortable that these people are out to help us. And so, I feel bad, but Ro Khanna's probably, if it's not going to be Kamala, or if Biden doesn't find a way to run, it's probably going to be Ro Khanna. And I mean, I know that Weaver and others were saying, Ro, we want you to run. So we did a show on that on Status Quo a while back, talking about, that Roe was being secretly courted by the Sanders campaign, by the people that worked on Sanders campaign to try and run. So that's what I'm expecting.
Anything that Jeff Weaver says, I would do the opposite. With all due respect, Jeff. Sorry.
Yeah, there's no question.
Yeah, and there are people that were in Bernie's camp that, frankly, probably did a real number on him in terms of hurting his chances. I don't think there was anybody who was better for Bernie than Nina Turner. I've always maintained that. I think that, you needed more people that were just willing to take on the establishment head on and, were willing to suffer the consequences as a result. But because of that, we are now seeing this really grassroots movement centered on labor, which is what it needed to be all along. That's what our focus was when you ran for Congress. And we unfortunately are facing that very problem. Like I said, the biggest impediment to Jen running against Wasserman Schultz again is Dan Reynolds, who's head of the Broward County AFL-CIO. I mean, he is judge, jury, and executioner in this part of the country. There are other unions that would love to endorse her.
They won't step out against him.
They won't cross him because they fall in that hub.
You bring the great point up. I want to say this. I was getting chastised earlier for focusing only on national politics. But when you look at local politics, it is the most corrupt, the most viciously high school lunchroom bullshit you've ever seen in your life. And I'm like saying to myself, are you, excuse my French, but
No,
are you
it's all
fucking
right.
kidding me? Is this really what you're propping up as the counter to my elections aren't giving us what we thought they'd give us? I was making the very case that we made with the labor movement already. But that somehow or another, people think that they're going to wake up on election morning, go out there with their flip-flops on, hit the button, go back home, drink coffee, and we're going to have a Green New Deal. They just think that's the way it's going to work. They don't realize that it's going to require far more than that. And local politics, I mean, I'm telling you right now, I mean, I've talked to friends that have run for like dog catcher and crap jobs, ridiculous, alderman this and, constable that or whatever. And the amount of bullshittery that goes on at the local level, it pales in comparison to the James Bond level bullshit that goes on at the national. But at the local level, I swear to God, you can almost see these people with potatoes with corn in it, flinging it from their thing at the food fight. It's ridiculous. I don't know how anybody could put their hope in local politics, local elections, much less national at this point, without having that labor movement really backing us up. And you're telling me that the goddamn labor union, once again, is backing up the corporate whore. And to me, I talked to a guy named Joe Burns, who is a lawyer for the airline union, works with Sarah Nelson. And he was talking about the difference between the rank and file union members and their leadership. And their leadership ends up being in DC, going to 4- and 5-star dinners every night, playing tennis and golf with all the people that we supposedly despise. And after a little while, you realize that there's some perks in this job. If I'm too successful, I won't probably get invited to play golf again. And so that whole mindset goes in the divide. And so you've got the union who's putting their faith and trust in these leaders that are selling them out for a Scooby snack. I mean, these guys are literally not representing their union. So what you're telling me about the local, food fight down there in Broward, I mean, this is not, just a Florida thing, man. Everywhere you go, this kind of trashish is going on. And I don't see any hope in that without that strong union presence outside, and maybe even without their leaders, maybe just a rank and file, because you can see when the leaders vote, they're not voting what the rank and file are telling them. They're endorsing candidates that have nothing to do with the wants and needs of their people. It's very scary. So keep an eye on that divide. Just because their leaders say yes doesn't mean the union says yes.
Oh yeah, no, we know that. Like that we've seen in many cases. For us, it's very frustrating. And locally, we're a right to work. So, unions are pretty neutered here in the first place. But the bit that we have, it's controlled by this one person who is completely entwined with Debbie. And that's just the way it is. Like, and it's just, we didn't even get a screening, which is a violation of their own bylaws. And the rank and file have no idea this is going on, and they're paying dues into this union, and all of this is going on. And so we always distinguish the difference between labor and union. Like, we always back labor, but union is not always working in the best interest of its own members.
Unfortunately, we're stuck in a part of the country that also has, we've had people come in from other parts of the country that say that Broward County politics it's a different kind of animal compared to a lot of other places. Sheila McCormick, who is a new congresswoman, won the open primary race again for Alcee Hastings, the departed, as I like to say, seat, because that's how it is in some of these communities. She was only able to win because she was able to get an unbelievable chunk of the vote in Palm Beach County, because Broward County, unfortunately, has this really entrenched, controlled system that's been in place for over a generation. Debbie has been an elected representative in Broward County for over 30 years, but she's not the only one. You've got county commissioners that have been around. You have You have state representatives that are looking to move around within the county so they can go run in other places.
Well, that's the thing. They play musical chairs. Like, that's the thing. Like, they'll come out, they'll term out of our state house. We actually have term limits in our state house. They'll term out of our state house. They'll go into the county commission. They'll go into something else. They all just, it's like this revolving door. It's just and it's just income. That's just what they do.
And the problem is that
it's power.
Yes. Oh, it's power. Absolutely. And look, one of them in particular, I won't name him, but he fancies himself as a man about town. Like, he's one of those guys who's been in it for a long time and loves the attention.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know,
are you talking about like Boss Tweed?
Boss Tweed. And so that's our code name. But basically, if you saw him, you'd be like, yeah, absolutely, 100%.
And he's not even a bad one, though.
No, and he's not, but he is locked in with Devin, 100%.
And he's one of the nicer people. Yeah, no, it's disgusting. Our local political thing is just absolutely, it is like high school.
So to even have that, disruption, it's so systemic, it's so dirty, because that's the beauty of what Bernie, and let's be honest, what Trump did in 2015 and 2016. They awoke a sleeping giant in this country because things had been this way for so long. No one was ever paying attention to what was under the hood of the car. And now all of a sudden they decided to look, and what they saw was what, frankly, I don't know how anybody would like it. You know, just the ones that have been so used to it. And that's why there's been such a narcissistic backlash as a result of it. You see these people, you see it on social media all the time. They get on the voters. These people that live in the Philadelphia suburbs, for example, they go after voters. They don't even want to go after the leaders. They're like, how dare you question our dear leaders? And they get on people for voting for Trump. You do the same thing. You do the exact same thing. You just do it in a different way. And right now, I got to be honest, Steve, with and Jordan Sheridan, friend of the show, status quo, amazing, tremendous guy, really great.
It's really, he's the only person that covers these things. And then you've got More Perfect Union. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the menu.
Real progressives are pretty good too.
Yes, but we're
try.
talking outside of present company. Like, and Jordan's on the ground.
Well, just so you know, I wear two hats. Jordan, you owe me a hat. But yeah. I co-host with him on Tuesday nights, and I've got my own show over there now on Thursday nights called Let's Get Ready to Grumble. So
that's
yeah.
So that's
he has really good announcer voice. But that's really good. So then
let's get ready to grumble.
Yeah.
He does good voice. He's a good voiceover person. But you have your Rogue Scholar as well, yes?
I have so many freaking things at this point, man. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Rogue Scholar at noon, and you've been on there with me, so you know the show. And then Tuesday nights I'm on with Jordan for he and I do a segment together. And then Thursday nights it's Steve's solo show. It's usually a 3-round fight where I try and tie 3 topics that are kind of associated together into 3 rounds, and at the end it's like, and still, And that's so awesome. We've turned it into a little bit of a fun thing. And but then on Saturday mornings I've got my podcast Macro and Cheese. So, and there's more brewing beneath the surface, so more to follow, but definitely very, very busy guy.
Yes.
Very busy guy.
Jordan.
And I work full time, and I'm a family man. So,
and you have 9 kids. How old's your oldest though?
30.
Okay, so you've got kids.
3 marriages.
He has kids that take care of themselves. Is my point.
That's right. I have kids that are lawyers, like actually certified lawyers. Got their degree at James Mason, and I've got daughters that are like executive headhunters. But then I also have local kids that are young that are still going to high school and so forth. And I've got a child, my youngest, who is 6 years old, autistic, wonderful little boy, the best little boy of all time. And so, I've got a son that's in the military. I've got a big family. So definitely a big family.
Yeah.
Jordan has definitely sounded the alarm as he did today, which I even said to Jen. I think that the Hunter Biden story is a legitimate scandal. I think it's very serious because I think there are serious underlying issues that exist between Ukraine and, yes, I'm going to say it, China. This is China. This is a very serious thing. And what I think is going to happen, since the corporate media is so intertwined with the Democratic Party, that if McConnell takes over, they are going to impeach Biden. It's going to happen. I think if you're going to impeach Trump and you did it in the fashion that you did it, and knowing full well that it's going to be gridlocked for 2 years, what else are you going to do? Gin up support for the masses for the general election in 24 and continue to kick the can down the road and waste time. But again, do I think that there's, smoke where there's fire? Yeah, I do. I think that there's really something to the story. But I also know that it takes a 2/3 majority to kick a president out of the White House, and that is not happening. So I think that you could basically count on 2023 basically being devoted to that if they grab the House and the Senate. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. The volleyball will keep going. I mean, here's the thing, right? I hope you all, it's kind of grayed out. It's kind of like a transparency, but there's this clock going tick, 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 tick. And that's physics talking about the environment right now. Okay. And so while this thing is going tick, 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 and we end up diverting our attention over here and back over here, like newsflash, oligarchs are corrupt. Newsflash, the president is corrupt. Newsflash, Republicans are going to, newsflash, the Democrats are going to. It's always the wash, rinse, repeat cycle that we go through. But the one thing that is steady going, it's like truth is marching, is the freaking environment. And so I hope upon hope that as much as we're all living our best lives trying to ignore this, that we get our heads out of our asses collectively and realize that while we're focused on Ukraine, instead of focused on the fact that NATO is really the military arm of the IMF, which is really the long arm of the United States, instead of focusing on our geopolitical angles using our payment system as a means of discipline, instead of focusing on that and really shifting gears to becoming a better not corporate citizen, but global citizen, okay, and really fighting this climate change issue. I'm telling you right now, this is the one issue. I want healthcare, need healthcare, would love to get rid of my student debt, and like you wouldn't believe, and he could do it with a pen stroke. I would love for all these things to happen, but the one thing that all of us, whether you're a Trumpian or whether you're a Biden bot or whatever the hell you are, if whatever facet of life you fall into, that climate change issue, it doesn't matter. It's going to get you. And just like, don't look up. I mean, really, this is one of those don't look up moments. And we keep getting distracted by 1,000 shades of identity politics, 1,000 shades of who done it in Ukraine. I mean, face it. If you understand the structure of the IMF, you could see the IMF working tooth and nail, okay, to not only get their hooks into Ukraine, which they have done majestically, by the way, but to also destabilize Russia, because what does the U.S. need right now? Unfortunately, Joe Biden or a real president, a better president that could step up and say, folks, it's time for us to modernize America. We're going to rebuild our infrastructure. Look at our friends in China who are doing such majestic work. We would like to tear a page. We'd like to talk to some of their engineers, find out how they're doing this stuff, and work collaboratively for the best solutions to make United States the best place, blah, blah, blah. But instead, because we're assholes, because we're a bunch of yahoos, we got to have an enemy. So what do we got? We've got a Cold War brewing. And this stuff is very similar to when China was going through its own civil war, and the U.S. was busy just coming off of World War II. And all of a sudden you had old Uncle Joe, Stalin, sitting there pushing in. And you know what? The United States didn't like that. So the United States did all of its NATO building and all the other crap through that period. And it's the same exact story today, unfortunately. So we are literally kicking the ball beyond an event horizon. We're kicking a ball beyond the break point. And I just hope that we can focus on that a little bit. I mean, we talked about, I think it was 12 years, like 5 years ago when the IPCC report came out in 2017, I think it was. Now we're looking at even more stuff. And they're saying the one thing that's holding us back from actually addressing climate change is politics. Fancy that. Who'd have thunk it, right? Because it's a fucking, it's a theater. It's a three-ring circus. It's not real. It's theater. And so until we take that power back, and I'm going to keep reverting to this because this is my message and I'm not deviating. We've got to get that movement together. It's not just labor. Labor has got to focus on the climate too, because what's going to happen? Think about this. You got in like Pakistan and India, two nuclear powers that hate each other. Right now, all of a sudden you get arid lands coming through there and you get migration. Now you got Hindus coming with Muslims and they're fighting like tooth and nail because they hate each other. And you have the same exact stuff going on in the US. We got to get our act together so people understand, number one, this is real. And number two, hey, you're going to have some neighbors that are different than what you thought because they're going to have to move away from these arid conditions as the tsunamis come, wipe out villages, etc. This is, I hate for us to not focus on this while all this noise is going on. This right here, no matter who's in office, has got to be like that zero focus, pull back, shoot the arrow right at that target. I really believe this is ground zero. If we don't get through this, it won't much matter about any of the stuff we're talking about. I think you're
absolutely right. No, and where I do think that the president of the United States actually plays a significant role in this, and I do think that you do need to have some type of a grassroots run of it again in 2024, is executive action could actually help move this thing along. Because as the president of the United States, you have the authority to implement the Defense Production Act. If you declared a national emergency and said, which we are living in, a climate emergency, you can start the Defense Production Act and build a clean energy grid. And you could probably build it, Steve, in about a couple of years. It probably wouldn't even take that long, to be honest. You want to get us off of, and again, this is all about the fact that you still have a generation of people that were born post-World War II that do not have a lot of time left. And it's kind of running concurrent with this whole idea of, well, I'm not going to be here to see it, so I don't give a shit. So I'm not going to change my ways to satisfy you because I just don't care. And there's also this issue of facing your own mortality, which a lot of people in their 70s and 80s start to have. There is a lot of resentment for younger people because they have one or two generations ahead of them to live. And there are people who are on their way out who just don't, there is this, like I said, this facing of immortality that they just don't care about. There are people who simply are way too religious for words. You live in Pennsylvania, They really, look, there are people who believe that the rapture is coming in their lifetime.
We had a president that believed that. That's
why George W. Bush.
He wasn't the legitimate president, but he sat there for 8 years. So, and he was waiting for the rapture.
And then you could believe that Obama was out there doing the same bullshit, thinking that he had to cater to that crap. This is why I do make a play for libertarians, because they really hate this shit as much as we do. They have a lot. Now, I know you close your eyes, but they really do believe in the separation of church and state. They're just not willing to vote against the GOP because they hate the Democrats even more. So
I'm a former libertarian, man. And I mean, literally, I campaigned for Ron Paul like you wouldn't believe. If you go back through my old Facebook memories, you can see the transition from Grumbine 1.0 to 2.0 to 3.0. And now it's like, comrade, how are you today? I for real, like my journey has been quite massive. I have done that, tour that crossed the divide. I have gone on my sojourn. But I'm telling you right now, the problem, and it's a very serious problem. And this is not me, like, I just don't like libertarians. This is me being a former libertarian saying, I know what we wanted. I know what we fought for. I know how there's certain aspects of that are very, very cult friendly, that literally, when I say cult, I mean, not like, kill this cult. I'm talking about like, there's like a belief system, right? And it's not just a political party, it's an ideology. And that ideology wants to literally make the government non-existent, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. And that right there is part of the reason why you had the great financial crisis in 2008, 2009, because we created an auditory, a surveillance state for Wall Street that was non-existent. It was a fake. It was a fraud. It was gums, no teeth. And so they could do anything they wanted. And that right there is just a sniff of what a libertarian hellscape is. And so while you can be certainly commiserating, you can be a civil libertarian,
Yeah.
but not give up the ghost. The idea of being a leftist civil libertarian is a Noam Chomsky thing. I mean, we're not talking about that far. The right libertarian, though, and I'm telling you, I didn't come from the left libertarian. I came from the Sig Heil right libertarian, okay? And it is a very, very destructive mindset, a very destructive belief set. And I don't blame the people. The people themselves are disgruntled. They're jaded. They've been hurt. They've been wounded. They don't see there is no alternative. They see no hope. And so they're like, well, shit, I may as well live La Vida Loco. Let me go out there and do whatever I feel like doing. And if you watch the show, and it's a show, mind you, it is a show. It's not real life. Okay. But if you watch Yellowstone, okay, you get a feel for libertarian love. I live it, watch it, love the show. But I got to tell you, I watch it and I remember deep memories of what that whole world is like. And it is one of those things where I would never want to be guilty of propping that up, because I once did, and I've got to redeem the time. I got to undo what I did, because I'm a persuasive guy. I'm a sales guy. And for me to be able to sell libertarianism to people, I mean, Murray Rothbard, of all people, believes that a mother there's no responsibility for a mother to even feed her child. How dare you coerce me? That's force. It goes against the non-aggression pact. I'm principle. These people are fucking bankrupt. I mean, they're mentally bankrupt. And it comes from the Ayn Rand objectivist world. And I'm telling you, I was going for my PhD and I did a paper on objectivism. I was still libertarian. And I look back on it, I feel very ashamed. Let me just tell you, very ashamed. So what I'm talking about here is not like some sort of a feel-good journey where it's like, hey, you're okay, I'm okay, we're all okay. It's like, hey, dude, I know where you are. I was once there. Let me pull you out of that cult and let me bring you into society, because I've come to believe that no matter how many degrees I have, no matter how smart I am, I need people, sadly. This world is not carved up for the Wild Wild West where you could just go out there and drop a stake in the ground and break out a rifle and call it home. It's not like that anymore. We're in a different point in history.
I mean, this isn't the 1893 Oklahoma land rush?
First of all,
nah, exactly.
First of all, Steve, Beth Dutton is my spirit animal. Okay. Like, I cannot, like, there is no character that is more amazing than, like, I love her, that show. But in certain places and certain parts of the country, that's just how it is. Yep. Things are taken care of in a very different way. When you get a ride to the train station, it's not good. You know, it's not good. You know what the train station is, right? There's no train and it's not a station, but you never come back from it.
Okay, fair enough.
So it's over the border in Wyoming. There's got to be a lot of bodies buried.
No, but what I do think is very true is that, you know, we talk about this all the time. Our common enemy is corporate power. The reality is some of the cleanest, safest places in the country to live are the most dead red places you're ever going to find, especially in the Great Plains region, where taking care of the environment is very important to them. The problem we run into is there are people that are still stuck in the matrix of this idea that our party is going to save us, or their party is the enemy. No, the enemy is corporate special interests that have bought our government. This idea that government can't work, of course it can work, if it's not bought by corporate power.
Actually, it's working exactly how it's intended to.
Well, of course.
That's it. I mean, look, I'm going to break out some Howard Zinn momentarily. I mean, Howard Zinn is one of the most prolific writers.
Right?
The most prolific writers and one of the most incredible minds of the history of this country. And when you think about the way he explains history and you start understanding how things came to be, how our documents came into existence. And, you know, I mean, I remember this one part in his history, People's History of the United States, where he talks about the Mexican-American War. And he talked about, you know, sending people off to die in these wars, and they come back, they're not even fed, they're not even paid, they're nothing. They got storehouses, warehouses full of food that nobody's able to touch. I mean, like the whole idea of American exceptionalism starts with the capital that came from Europe and set up shop here and literally didn't feel like paying homage to England, so they broke free. That wasn't a people's revolution. That wasn't the American Revolution. That was the bourgeois revolution, and it definitely wasn't helping me out at all. So, I think to myself, how many people died in this name of this home of the free and the land of the brave, or the home of the brave and the land of the free, or whatever the fuck ever lie they're pumping at you. I mean, it is really, really sad, because you hearken back to these documents that we hold near and dear, and you get people that die for the flag and stuff like that. And you feel for them, because they really meant it. It wasn't like some fake thing that they did, but the people over top of them. I mean, when you send your military around the world to clear markets, to make countries more business friendly, which is exactly, if you read the organizing papers for the structural adjustments that were offered up for even Ukraine when IMF came in there, the whole point of it was to make Ukraine more business friendly. And when they go down to the South, they make the South more business friendly. They literally get rid of the riffraff that wouldn't be okay with capital extracting everything from their state. They get rid of the social safety net. They get rid of everything. That is neoliberalism. That is a Mount Pelerin society. That is all the other things that Milton Friedman put forward. And that, my friend, is also peak anarcho, capitalism right there. That is like the literal definition, the peak end of Ayn Rand's Makers and Takers success stories. And it really is the enemy. It is the enemy. It's not just corporations. It's that neoliberal paradigm of privatization, extraction, and then raping. And I think that, chapter 9 of what was it? Something like imperialism, the last stage or highest stage of capitalism, which was a book by Lenin, talks explicitly about global capital. And this is back in freaking 1900s. We're not talking about like yesterday, but when you read it, when you actually read this chapter 9, it's the kind of the big chapter that pulls it all together. And if you read that, you've read the whole thing. I mean, I hate to give it away. It's good. Read the whole thing. But if you just read chapter 9, it will literally give you the end to end about global finance capital and how they were doing this even then to like Argentina and Venezuela. This is stuff that was going on in the 1800s, and it's still happening now. And except it's worse now because the guns are bigger, the weapons are stronger, and climate is ticking. So anyway, that's Grumbine's message in a bottle right there. I mean, it's all about the friggin' environment. It's all about getting organized unions, whatever it takes, by any means necessary.
Yeah.
And I mean by any means necessary.
Well, I certainly was able to convince multiple generations that what I was preaching was a crock of bullshit, and unfortunately, it's destroyed America. But I speak from the grave, and I speak for
They're
America.
all horrible, and I believe Zinn should be required reading in high school.
He is absolutely a hero.
That should be history right there.
Steve, we could talk for hours on end. Where can people find you?
Oh my God, there's so many places.
Well, of course.
He's everywhere.
I am everywhere, but I am begging you, please, folks, I'm pleading with you. Check out our podcast, Macro and Cheese. It is audio only. You don't have to look at my ugly mug. You can just put the headphones in and listen away. There's about 170 episodes, just so you know. And we just finished this great one with Ron Gray on the eCash Act, which is a bill that's going in to create a digital US dollar, basically, where you actually can use it without it tracing, without it being, electronically traced. It's like cash, eCash. So we just did that one. But the next 3 episodes are going to be a deep dive into Mao from 1900 all the way to 1976. Wow. We really went through it with the Silk and Steel podcast, Carl Jha. And I'm also on Monday, Wednesday, Friday at noon Eastern time on Real Progress in Action's YouTube channel. I do a show called The Rogue Scholar. And I also am over at Status Quo on Tuesday and Thursday nights. Tuesday night I do a show, Jordan and I together, and on Thursday nights I've got my own show called Let's Get Ready to Grumble.
I love that.
So I'm gonna have if you want me to do it for you, I'll
my God.
Let's get ready to grumble.
And we need to have like a powwow between us, Steve, and Jordan. Like
of course.
And we just need
always
to do
fun
because it's always good. Friendly conversation, of course, very effective too. And look,
Thank you for
we're all the
coming
same
on,
page with
Steve.
everything.
Thank you. It's
You
always
got
so good.
Remember, guys, Defense Production Act, the president can enact it and say
can do
just
a lot of
sign it
things.
right now.
You
And
can
of
sign
course-
away student debt right now too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Sign away student debt, expand Medicare to everybody, legalize cannabis, eliminate medical debt. He could do a lot. So anybody who's saying that the president's not capable is a crock of duty. So with that said, Steve, we love you. Always
Thank
a
you.
pleasure. We'll see you soon, brother.
Thank you all so much. Have a great one.
You
Bye.
too. The man. And of course, a quick transition right into our wonderful friend who we did not want to keep. She is a former Slate mate of Jen's with brand new Congress, and she ran for the U.S. Senate in the wonderful state of Iowa.
We've been having so many Iowans lately.
We have,
Seriously,
We have.
you're like the third Iowan in a month.
but she is
Had
now
it.
running for Polk County Attorney, which is a very important local position,
Yeah, it is.
and all politics is local. Kimberly Graham, welcome for the first time to Generational Change.
Hi.
Hello, good to see you guys again.
So good to see you. It's interesting because you're obviously going from running a statewide race to a very local race, and so that's probably like a slightly easier campaign jump in terms of like infrastructure
Well,
for you.
travel, that's for sure.
Well, right, that, but I think that it's such a huge position. Like we in general do not pay enough attention to our local and county races, and yet here we do, but in general, and the state attorney position is extremely important. That's how criminal justice is reformed, and that's the best way to do it. So, talk about, coming out of the Senate race, like where you were and like what led you to go, be specifically for this seat.
Yeah. So, yes, this is a much, in some ways, an easier race just because Iowa is a very large state and it's pretty taxing driving 4 hours to speak for 15 minutes and then driving home for 4 hours. Doing that for a year is a lot. So, everywhere that I speak now is in Polk County, which is where I live, of course. So it's just logistically, of course, in that one small way, it's easier. But everything else, I think, is, very similar. So what happened after the U.S. Senate race was quite literally, I was out running, had my earbuds in, and I was listening to a podcast called Getting Curious with Jonathan Van Ness, which is an excellent podcast. Jonathan Van Ness is a brilliant guy and curious, as his podcast says, and he has all different people on there from all different topics. Just like he'll have a reptile expert on one day, and then the next day have Rachel Rollins, the district attorney of Suffolk County, which is the Boston area. And that was the podcast I happened to be hearing that day. And I was trying to decide, folks, if anybody's ever run for office, when you lose an election, you start, of course, thinking about, do I even want to run for anything again? If I do, what do I want to run for? And so I was out for a run, heard this interview with Rachel Rollins, who's now the U.S. attorney for Massachusetts. But she was the DA, state's attorney, county attorney. Those are all interchangeable terms in the United States.
Yeah.
And she was talking about this reform and all of the things that she was changing and the way that the local criminal justice system operates, and about what you said, basically, that if we want criminal justice reform, the way that we're not going to get it in a substantive way from the feds, depending on the state you live in. Here in Iowa, we're not going to get it from my state legislature because it's a Republican-dominated state legislature and governor here in Iowa. So how we change our justice system is one DA's office at a time, one county attorney's office at a time. And that's the fastest way to get change. And so there's been what I call a forward-thinking, evidence-based prosecutor movement now in this country for 5-6 years. That's just gaining steam with every single election cycle, and more folks are getting elected. So I heard Rachel talk about this, and I literally stopped running, and I was like, just listening to, because even though I've spent 22 years representing indigent defendants, both on the criminal defense side and the juvenile court side, as well as doing mediation and collaborative law, but I've spent a lot of time in courtrooms on the other side of a table from a prosecutor, and I know that world, but I just didn't know a whole lot about how drastically we would be able to change things if we just changed the county attorney, we just changed the district attorney. So I started thinking about that. And also that was right around the time, it was just a few weeks after Mr. Floyd was murdered in Minnesota, which is just to our north, not far from here, not that far from here. And so, I was out with a lot of folks at protests over the summer, and our county attorney here, who's actually a Democrat, was prosecuting a journalist who was at a BLM protest. That became international headlines because she was the only journalist in the world that was taken to trial. There was 130 journalists arrested during that whole summer of protests, but only one in the whole nation was taken to trial, and it was Andrea Sahuri here from the Des Moines Register in Polk County.
I think he's getting money from NextEra Energy, probably. Pretty likely. You mess with those pipelines, baby, you're going to have a real problem on your hands.
Yeah. So she was acquitted, to state the obvious, but the trial was a joke. And, there was just a lot of things going on in the Polk County Attorney's Office that I knew anecdotally and from working in it, but seeing these systemic issues, really brought to the forefront, combined with just the moment of, hey, everyone's waking up, we need significant change. Just kind of all combined together to make me want to do this. And of course, you have to be an attorney to run for Polk County Attorney, which I am already. So it just seemed like a really good fit. And, when I ran for U.S. Senate, it was because of justice, economic justice, criminal justice reform, environmental justice, all kinds of, racial justice, social justice. It's no different. I mean, it's the same reason I'm running for Polk County Attorney, because we need reform and we need things to change, and they're not changing. So I decided to do this, and it's been almost a year. June, I think early June is when we announced. So it's been almost a year of campaigning, and
that's really, no, I think it's awesome. No, it's extremely important. And I actually love when defense attorneys go work for the state attorney's office. That is a revolving door in a good direction. A good friend of mine here she worked in the PD's office, and she actually ran for public defender. And she lost, and the guy who won is not somebody she wanted to work for. And she ended up going over to the state attorney's office, and she never thought of that before. And now, you get to make a difference before it gets to the defendant's the defense attorney's desk. And I think it's sort of I love the idea of defense-minded attorneys being in the state attorney's office. I think that we need more of that, actually.
Well, we just got a new Supreme Court justice who has served as a public defender.
It's so exciting.
That probably more than any other reason is what should be celebrated.
Well, and she's the first in a few justices that has actually tried a case at all. So, we're right.
That's crazy to me, but okay. Yeah. I mean, and of course there's always noise about whenever a defense attorney runs to be a prosecutor, which has happened many times in the last several years in this country. But you've never been a prosecutor. How can you know what you're doing? You've never been a prosecutor. I get how it can be hard for people that aren't lawyers to understand, but if you have trial experience and you have courtroom experience and that's the world you live in, it's not like, oh, you've been a heart surgeon. How could you ever be an orthopedic surgeon? You have no training in that. It's not, it's not that different. And we work to preserve people's constitutional rights as defense attorneys, right? And so we have to know what's going on there. And then there's so many things that need changing here in Polk County. Specifically, one of them that is really close to my heart because I represent a lot of abused and neglected kids in juvenile court is how our justice system affects kids, especially here in Iowa. So a year ago, November, our own Iowa Department of Human Rights Division of Criminal and Juvenile Justice Planning came out with this gem. I mean, it is a good study, but it's unfortunate. The results are unfortunate. Right. Racial disparities, an analysis of 3 decision points in Iowa's juvenile justice system. I make a lot of notes on things when I see that. So this has, statistics in it like in 2019, African-American youth aged 10 to 17 in Iowa were 6.5 times more likely to enter the juvenile justice system for a simple misdemeanor compared to white youth.
Yeah. Florida is particularly bad here. Like,
And but we're number one. So the
Are
sentencing the sentencing project, here's where we're number one. You might think, some state in the South, like, if you just presume the South is going to be worse, which a lot of Northerners, they do. And so, and it's not true. It's not true. So last summer, the Sentencing Project came out with a study that ranked Iowa dead last in the nation. We detain, which is incarceration basically, we detain more Black youth per capita in Iowa than any other state in the nation.
Oh, that's bad. Like that is a really bad thing. I mean, I'm not remotely surprised that happens, but it is interesting that it's Iowa. That is what's interesting. I mean, you would think that would be here. Actually, when we're high up there, we are like our disparities are pretty bad.
Florida doesn't need to be number one in everything.
I know we could share the limelight with Iowa from time to time.
Right. Yeah. So that's something. And Polk County is the largest county in the state. That's Des Moines is located in Polk County. It's the most populated county. It's the most diverse county. Iowa is a heavily predominantly white state, but a lot of our people of color are concentrated in the larger city areas, especially here in Polk County. Yeah. And so we just have so much opportunity here, more than I wish we did, to improve, and to really change, especially our juvenile justice system. So we have a lot of opportunities here. Allegedly, we have some kind of restorative justice program here. I say allegedly because the Polk County Attorney's Office website says something about a restorative justice program, but in reality, I've never heard a huge amount about it. So it doesn't seem like it's very robust if it does exist. But we need to really triple down on that. And, we also need more funding for it. I've also visited with a lot of forward-thinking prosecutors across the country over the past year, and they've all recommended we get a grant writer immediately and start applying for federal grants for some of this stuff because our state legislature is not going to provide funding for us, but we can get money from the feds for that, and that's what we hope to do.
If you could talk about the importance of running for local office, because it's one of the, I think, the evolving components of what's happened over the last 5 years. A lot of people were inspired by Bernie. A lot of people were inspired by Trump. Got to keep it real. But a lot of them ultimately had theories of grandeur and that they're going to run for these big offices and not realizing just how entrenched politics is at the local level and at the state level. And obviously, we see what federal politics does to people. I do think when you have candidates that will run for local office, like I said, we had J.D. Schulten on the show last week.
Yay, J.D.
We had who was our other Iowan? C.J. Peterson.
Yeah.
Oh my God, CJ's organizing a fundraiser for us at a wonderful LGBTQ plus event that he's organizing for us in a couple weeks.
Okay, it's official. All Iowans know each other, but go on.
Well, all Iowans in politics pretty much do know each other. I'm just telling you.
You know what? Being the first of the nation, I think is really important. And the point is, the local politics, I think, is immensely important. But I also think because of how unbelievably bourgeois the Democratic Party is, I mean, its leader is the ultimate bourgeois in Nancy Pelosi. So when you have that
let them eat cake.
Yeah, that distinction is very dangerous because, I mean, look, there are definite issues in Iowa, but this idea that they're going to take the first in the nation out of Iowa, I don't think people realize how every 4 years, how much economic benefit the state actually receives and how much that can ultimately change for the better when more people like yourself are running for local office, because the whole dynamic can change, especially if you want to elect a non-corporate representative to president of the United States. It's one of the most overlooked aspects of Bernie's two runs is that the infrastructure that's been in place for so long doesn't have people that reflect Bernie's values. If you had more people that were in positions of power, like the attorney of Polk County, that can have a tremendous impact going forward in elections. So if you could talk about the importance of local elections and what being first in the nation means to fellow Iowans.
Yeah, well, I mean, local elections, what people don't realize, and I'm fairly new to politics. I never grew up thinking I'm going to run for office. This is my life dream. Like, I decided to run for office like most of us who would be, I guess, labeled progressive. I just call us, evidence-based and data-driven, like, and doing things that want to benefit most people, but whatever. So, I think that most of us are motivated to run for office because a lot of us work in fields like I do, representing indigent defendants and stuff, where we work with the folks that are most negatively impacted by our justice system or by the way that our country works in regards to healthcare or whatever it may be. But these local offices, they really affect your day-to-day life. And to be blunt, it's not that common. Sure, it impacts you. But your congressperson, your U.S. senator is probably going to affect your day-to-day life far less than your city council member, your board of supervisors member, your local county attorney who decides who's going to get charged with what crime, whether they're going to add sentencing enhancements, what the plea deal is going to be, how the plea deal is going to be proffered, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So these are like rubber meets the road. These are day-to-day things. Your city council people are going to affect, how your roads are. Are there a bunch of potholes in your neighborhood, or are the roads okay because they've allocated the right budget to fix the roads every year? We have bad winters, so our roads get really bad every year.
Yeah,
you guys don't have that. We call the spring pothole season because that's when the snow all melts, and then all of our cars are literally having to go for repairs because we hit these giant potholes and break our car. Anyway. So it's really tough. We're intrepid here, but and so those local offices are critically important. And if you want to take a macro view, a longer view, you could also, of course, argue, and it's true, that they're also important because they build the bench, right? They get people into politics who may want to run for something higher up the ladder in politics perhaps, but then they have those experiences, they have those connections that you need to be successful running for office. They start having folks that see how they govern and see that they're out there listening to people and talking to people, and they get folks on board to support them over the years that they're serving on city council or they're serving on the board of supervisors. And then those folks, if they so desire, might end up moving up. So that building the bench thing is something that Republicans know about and have been doing freaking forever. Getting people on school boards and boards and commissions and all of those things that I don't see enough yet. I think we're getting with the program, but I don't see enough Democrats on those things like those local boards and commissions, those kinds of political offices that just go under the radar for a lot of people. But those are super important. And as far as kind of the larger issue of the caucuses, this is not with some folks, this is not a very popular stance, but my perception is several-fold. Yes, it brings a huge economic benefit to our state. There are people who, for example, set up sound, right? Run sound for candidates when they put on an event or something, or rent out spaces for events, catering people, all the printing, all of our union printers here who print all those materials and yard signs and for all these candidates every 4 years. If that's all gone, that is a huge loss of income for those folks. And I empathize with that. And that's terrible to lose all of that income for those people. On the other hand, at the same time, the caucus system, in my view, is incredibly inequitable. It's one night, you got to show up in person. So if you can't get off work because you're a working person and they're not going to let you out of work to go to your caucus, you're not going to be part of that process. People that have children at home, people that have elders to care for, that just can't go. And it's also, you are there for hours. This is not like you show up for 15 minutes, like you vote at a voting booth and then you walk away. People that don't know about what caucuses are like, you go there at like 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. and you could be there till like 9, 10 p.m. Like these take hours and hours and hours. And it's kind of ideally it's great. It's a great democratic process and everyone who's there gets to, contribute. But that's the issue. Everyone who's there. And not everybody gets to be there.
So you would switch it to a vote. You would switch it to a primary.
I think that's far more equitable. That's actually much more inclusive, much
Yeah.
more inclusive. And,
Yeah.
That's not a popular stance in some Democratic Party circles, or some Democrats would disagree with me. But I just think that, the caucuses are awesome in a way, and it's awesome being first because, we literally get to talk to every presidential candidate in our neighbor's living room or in our living room, because they are just swarming all over this state of only about 3 million folks that live in Iowa. We only have a population in the whole state of about 3 million, and they're all over the place for like a year. And so they're doing all these little small meet and greets and events literally at your neighbor's kitchen, or your neighbor's barbecue in the backyard. And you get to stand there and chat with them and really get to know them a little bit, which is great. But I don't think it's worth the trade-off for how it kind of disenfranchises, folks from the caucus process.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that when it served its purpose and a time and a place and certain types of communities where that would work better.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds like you've outgrown it in terms of population, and that it is just not feasible. And most people do work. So I agree. I think, and that would be the equivalent if we didn't have mail-in ballots and people can't get to the poll. So
I
see the problem.
For sure. And also the big issue that is true is, as I mentioned quite a while ago, we're a very majority white state. We don't have a huge people of color, BIPOC population here. Of course we have some, but we don't have, it's not nearly as large a percentage as many other states. And so one of the, I think, legitimate arguments is, why should Iowa get to decide first when Iowa is not reflective in anywhere near the same percentages of folks of these different experiences, these different racial, ethnicity, immigrant, whatever status, statuses and identities as some other states that might be more representative of our country, writ large.
The state that comes to mind for me, if there was a switch, would be Ohio. That's a state that I think is kind of it encapsulates kind of everything that the country's about. But I also don't think it's fair for Iowans to lose. What I do think would be reasonable, that I think most people would agree with, is the two parties should not have their first in the nation caucus in the same state. I don't think there would be really much of a loss if only the GOP or the Dems did their first in the nation in Iowa. I think there would still be as much fervor and people would definitely be campaigning there on the regular. And if you were to open it up to another state, I think that could have tremendous economic benefit there as well. In fact, I don't think it was that long ago that it used to be that way, where it wasn't just the same in every state. And I do think mixing it up would have a lasting economic benefit. So switching, sure, but I think we can all agree that you don't have to have both parties in one state at one time. Do you think that that's a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think there's probably a multitude of ways that we could get creative with that, and not have it always be the same state, whatever states if it ends up switching to, this state, and this state.
Like the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Like the Super Bowl. There you go. With all due respect, I don't think we would have the first in the nation of Wyoming or Idaho, but, I digress.
Yeah.
I do think that there is something to be said for certain traditions are just meant to be broken. So with that said, as we wind down, what is the status of the race? How are things going? And frankly, how can people get involved, to make sure that you do get over?
Yeah, who are you running against?
Yeah. So the current county attorney has been there for 30 years. He's run unopposed for 30 years, but he's retiring. So he's retiring. However, about a year ago, February of last year, he hired a woman into the office who has been a prosecutor for 30 years. And so she's a career prosecutor, and she's already been working in that office now for a year. And she is a great prosecutor. She was the Violence Against Women Act prosecutor here for a while. She was with the AG's office. She's been with the U.S. Attorney's office during the Trump administration. And she's done really good work. That said, My concern is that we are not going to get the fundamental changes that we need to our justice system from someone who's been part of that prosecutorial mindset and paradigm for 30 years.
Yeah.
I just don't think we're going to get it. And I mean, what she's saying on the campaign trail versus what I'm saying are very, very different things. I mean, she's not saying any of the things we're saying, like, hey, we're not going to charge people for low-level possession of drugs anymore. We're not going to charge people for, these low-level nonviolent offenses. Instead, we're going to, connect them with services if they need them. We're planning to hire a full-time social worker into the office to connect folks with social services that need them, because overwhelmingly the folks that come in contact with the system are in poverty. And somebody relayed to me that she was at some event. I wasn't there, so I can't vouch that this is the verbatim. But someone told me that someone asked her something, and she kind of said, well, we're not going to be doing social work at the Polk County Attorney's Office. And I'm like, well, but if you do some social work at the Polk County Attorney's Office, you can prevent future crime. So wouldn't you want to do some of that?
No.
I would think so.
Yeah, so we have very different policies about things. We want to also establish an economic justice unit. We are going to treat kids as kids. We're going to be doing a lot of robust restorative justice and diversionary programs, focusing a lot more on domestic violence, sex trafficking, sexual assault, which this office, I believe, I have seen, in my opinion, is not focusing enough on, and instead is focusing more on the war on drugs kind of, side of things. So there's just a lot of differences. I would say I think she's the main opponent. There's another person in the race, but literally he doesn't have a website, doesn't have a Facebook page.
Right.
We don't know what he's doing. I mean, I don't know. Anyway.
You know what? Every race, there are those people. You just don't know until you see their name on the ballot. Like, who is that? People, because anybody can run for anything.
Politics attracts the most interesting of people, Kim. I think you know that. And,
yeah. Well, this guy actually was the former Democratic House Majority Speaker, like back in the day. And so we're not sure what he's doing, but whatever. So far the race is, I think, going really well. I mean, we're out there knocking doors like as much as we possibly can, because I think that's definitely the way you win local races, is you show up at people's doors. And
100%. And when is the primary?
June 7th, 56 or 7 days from now.
What is your website where people can help support?
It's
Kimberly4, FOR, Iowa.com, Kimberly4Iowa.com. And that would be awesome. These races are expensive. And I think this little story I'm about to say real quickly is really illustrative of this race and a lot of races like ours across the country. We have the most donors. And out of the three candidates, we've raised the least amount of money.
Oh, of course.
We've had over 1,000 donations at the time of the finance reports that were due in January. The next opponent had about 600 donations, and the other person had 35 donations.
Yeah.
And yet we had raised the least amount of money, which just, our average donation was like $37, which tells me we have people, they have money, and our people that support our race and know how urgent our need for justice reform is, don't have the kind of money to write $10,000 or $25,000 checks like one of my opponents got.
Well, we do make some money with this podcast.
And we do donate, and we will be happy to make a contribution.
We will absolutely contribute.
Thank you.
We don't take a salary. There's no point. This is about how do we further the cause. And so with the part that we can play, we will absolutely contribute. I don't want to put too much stock into endorsements, but how important would it be to get the Des Moines Register's endorsement if you could potentially get that?
I mean, as far as actually that being tied to winning, I don't know, because last time I didn't get that endorsement, and the person who did get it did not win, but the person who did get it wasn't the DSCC backed candidate either. So
fair.
But
right.
I would love to have it. Of course, I would love to have it, and that would be great. We have a lot of really excellent endorsements, and we've just asked regular folks to endorse us. And so we've had that, and we've had a lot of folks too that, that in my view, really get it. They get the need for serious change to our criminal justice system, who have, come out and endorsed us, which means the world to me, because I know that those particular folks really understand the need for change.
Yeah. Well, I like the fact that there's such a disparity between you and the person you're running against. I think that makes it very, like, to me, it makes it much clearer, and it's a lot easier for you. Like, that makes it easier.
Yes, but get this. Yes, and I was at an event the other day, and literally somebody who is a Democrat, this guy was actually running for office, so he's not that out of the loop. He said to me, Kimberly, so how do you distinguish yourself between you and this candidate, the candidate who's this other woman? Because I mean, you're both women.
Well, I mean,
I went, oh.
I'm assuming both white women, and so there, yeah, I guess there's no difference there then.
Hashtag not all Democrats. I don't know.
No, it's like, the fact that you are clearly the person that's in favor of justice reform. And traditionally what we've seen, especially in races for state attorneys, is this tough on crime stance. And the kind of people, like probably your state attorney who sat there for 30 years, and we had one that was literally just left
40 years.
Yeah. That was the whole thing. It was always tough on crime. We're going to get the criminals. And so you are essentially, I'm not saying it's the inverse of doing that, but it's really a much more of a focus on the general health and well-being of the system and how it treats people versus making sure you have really high, conviction stats. And those kinds of messages are very different. And so I'm thankful. This is why it's important to have defense attorneys running for state attorneys.
Well, as you like to say, one of the three pillars of society that should not have any profit motive is healthcare, education, and corrections. And unfortunately, corrections is a massive moneymaker.
Oh.
People don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
It's a huge problem.
Well, look, one of Wasserman Schultz's blackest eyes as a representative, and the only reason it didn't pan out is because the very wealthy and frankly Republicans that live in the western part of Broward County, she tried to put a for-profit prison right in a town called Southwest Ranches.
And they were not having it.
And if you know the Republicans who live there, they said, oh, you're not doing that at all.
That's horse country. It's rural, and it's very, they're not having that there. These are people, they believe way more in the Second Amendment than they care about tough on crime.
Yeah, and the amazing thing, if you have, and you maybe have noticed this on the trail, because this is an open race, right? Anybody can vote for you, correct? This isn't okay.
Right.
No, any Democrat, because it's a Democratic primary.
But the one thing we've noticed, especially with a lot of and we like to say libertarian leaning Republicans, they are very anti for-profit corrections. They do not believe in this idea that somebody who should go to prison because a private company wants to make a profit. So naturally, the state, the attorney's office can become very corrupted as a result because they get flush with cash by putting people in prison. We really need to break this cycle, and having somebody like yourself be the attorney of the biggest city in the state of Iowa, I think could without question pay incredible dividends.
Yeah.
And I wish more people would heed the message of local is everything.
And then if you win, you'll change those stats and you'll no longer be number one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope not. Yeah, I mean, this is definitely the largest county, the most populated county, and good thing, if we have any saving grace, we don't have any for-profit prisons in the state of Iowa. However, we have all kinds of for-profit service providers,
right?
Like the phone service and the video conferencing service and the food and the laundry and the whatever. All these related industries that serve our prisons, that are the prisons themselves are state-run. They're not private, but still plenty of that to go around, even though we don't technically have private prisons in Iowa.
It's a profit industry, and not just profit, but gouging. What they charge people that are incarcerated for services is outrageous. It's not even, and there's no, competition or anything like that there's anything you can do about it. And it is completely
well, the goal
is abhorrent.
Well, it's a cycle.
Really, it's abhorrent. The whole thing.
It's an endless cycle of incarceration. That's the goal. The goal is to fill as many beds as humanly possible because it is a for-profit industry. And if you need any more proof, we are a penal colony. the largest in the whole world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Florida
Exactly.
Florida has the most for-profit facilities in
Wow.
the country. Yeah, that we're number one.
You're not doing that. Yeah. I mean, and having it be so expensive to, for example, to have phone calls with the folks on the outside, that actually makes us less safe, because I think in the last 10 years or so, there's been a number of studies done, and I can't name them off the top of my head because I'm constantly reading and researching and I can't remember. But I know there's been a number of studies that when folks are allowed to have increased contact with their loved ones on the outside, that can keep some of those connections together so that there's a lower recidivism rate when they get out. So the fact that we're making this obstacle, that it's so expensive to continue to have that contact, because the vast majority of people that go to prison, they're going to get out. So we better prepare them for a productive life outside of prison. And also, the more education we give them while they're in prison, the lower the recidivism. I mean, it's a direct relationship. The lower the recidivism and the reoffending. And that's not something, unfortunately, I can control as Polk County attorney, but it's something worth talking about.
But because there's no profit, they want recidivism. See, the recidivism is what keeps them in business. The whole that's why, to me, the head of the snake is that it should never be there should be no profit motive in corrections, period.
Yeah.
And that would be the only way. Like, that would be the only way for there to actually be some sort of transparency in how things are done. Like, that to me is the biggest problem, is that there's a profit motive in incarcerating people. That's just that's unacceptable.
Yeah,
unacceptable.
Let's get you in, Kim. That's the
but
goal.
things are going great. We have our yard signs going up all over the county, which we really think they turned out nicely.
If you were running here as a Graham, you would do very well. Florida is a very Graham-friendly state for the most part.
Bob Graham is probably the best statewide elected representative Florida's ever had.
It's the last that's the last good governor we had.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we have to make up for Lindsay, so.
My son's name is Graham.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it's a good Scottish name. Good Scottish talk. Yeah.
It's good for a little Jewish boy to have a nice,
nice Scottish name.
Kimberly Graham, we love you. We appreciate you. Guys, KimberlyGrahamForIowa.com. Check it out. Follow her on social media.
Yeah, follow all the social media.
Our Twitter account at Kimberly for Iowa, I think is what it is. But we are just on fire. Tim Nelson, I have to say. Tim Nelson, thank you, Tim Nelson. He's my campaign director, social media director, political director. It's like just a couple of people show here. And he took our Twitter account from 0 to 48,000 in 10 months during the U.S. Senate race. And we've kept almost all those followers through this race, which has helped us raise money, which is so important. So he's a rock star with social media, and our Twitter account's pretty fun. So you might want to follow it.
All right, guys, check it out.
Definitely. Great to see you, my friend.
Thanks, Kimberly.
Good to see you guys. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Pleasure.
Yeah, people do not understand the importance of that position. Guys, people that are in state attorney positions have immense amounts of power over people's lives.
Yeah, they do.
They decide which small, minor pot infractions do or don't get prosecuted.
But
these are the people that, it's very important.
Look, it was a very impactful episode that Law and Order SVU did many years ago. No, it's
I know, it's just funny. I thought you were about to talk about what we just talked about, and then you're like, Law and Order. All right, go ahead.
The episode with Susie Kurtz.
Oh,
that was, what people don't understand is that you've got these kinds of crooked judges everywhere that are basically being funded by the for-profit prison industry.
It's true.
And that's how this is happening. And you're like, well, how do we know they're being funded? Because they're donating to their reelection campaigns.
Yeah, and this is a real thing. Well, this is also goes to why I do not agree in elected judges. I do not believe that the judicial branch should be political, partisan, or elected. I just don't. So and as somebody who has worked in both state and federal courts, I can tell you that yes, there are definitely good state court judges. I am not saying that there's not state court judges. You can occasionally elect someone that is actually really good. But the problem with allowing the general population to elect judges is that they're going to go for the person who has the biggest signs with the most money. And that is not necessarily the best person for that job.
No.
Now, with appointments, sure, they've become increasingly partisan. It's not great that it's done that way. But I will tell you the credentials of the federal judiciary is much different than that of the state level. And I've said this before, when it comes to this, I am somewhat of an academic snob. I want my jurists to be extremely bright and reasonable. I do. I don't need them to be regular judges. I don't need to have a beer with them. I don't need to hang out with them. I need the people that are interpreting laws to be really smart.
I don't want to.
That's what I want.
And again, it's very ironic that it's come to this, but I got to tell you, Ketanji Brown Jackson may be the best Supreme Court justice since Thurgood Marshall. I mean, we're really talking about somebody who
I'm very
could
pleased.
have a type of impact. And listen, there's not a lot of good things to say about Joe, but this is the hallmark of his presidency right now.
I'm very pleased. I love that she's a defense attorney sitting on the Supreme. I love that. And yeah, clearly extremely qualified and capable. Maybe she'll teach Amy Coney Island a few things.
Maybe
Amy Coney Island.
Let me tell you, the one thing that Ketanji's probably going to do, she's going to make Amy very uncomfortable. I do kind of.
I have a feeling that Ketanji has been making people uncomfortable for a very large amount of her life.
Well, because she.
I love that.
I'm gonna get that.
You just leave it be. We have a thing flying around in here and it's driving me crazy.
Yeah.
No,
it's not even that warm out yet.
No, but we're Florida. But I am very pleased about her. It has nothing to do with the fact that she's Black or a woman. I actually like her because she's qualified.
Again, immensely qualified.
Yeah.
Like, this is like the type of credentials you really need to be on the court. She's the first public defender.
That's
like
huge
to even
me.
think that everyone's like, when people do their stupid virtue signal about how this is the first Black woman on the court, you can say that after you say this is the first public defender on the court.
That's the most important thing. And that's what they don't get. Like, I'm just glad, seriously, I feel like I got lucky. Because he was going to virtue signal, he's appointing a Black woman. Well, I remember when the first woman was appointed to the Supreme Court, and I remember being excited about that. And I remember the years and years of disappointment that followed. Yeah. Not that she wasn't capable. Sandra Day O'Connor was very qualified and capable, disappointing nonetheless. This woman, I'm excited.
Just like Neil Gorsuch, you don't have to agree with his politics, but he's absolutely, he is qualified to be there. But Brett Kavanaugh is not qualified to be there, and Amy Coney Island Barrett is
You're
certainly
calling
not
her Amy Coney Island. You know what? When you're like the fact that I would be mocking a Supreme Court justice never would have entered my mind. And when I went to law school at St. Mary's, our law school had a summer program in Innsbruck, Austria. I didn't go, but I had a lot of friends that would go. And every year in Innsbruck, there was a visiting Supreme Court justice. And the year that my friends went, it was Rehnquist was the justice. And they all got to meet him and spend time with him. And it's like, this is a brilliant person. Didn't agree with him judicially on anything, but I wouldn't mock him. And I certainly wouldn't like make fun of him or joke. But the fact that I think so little of these people on the Supreme Court is very upsetting to me. Like, again, I'm not a fan of Scalia, but the man was brilliant. And we have fallen so far. And yes, Clarence Thomas was the first where I felt like we were taking a nosedive in terms of qualifications in lieu of virtual signaling. Which fortunately, I feel like we got lucky with this one. They were doing a virtue signal, and we got lucky that she's actually really great. Yeah. But that I do not think was part of their equation. I think they nominated her despite her being a public defender and actually being who the people that fight for justice would want.
I think whoever went to bat for her to get her through the nomination, the initial nominating process.
Way progressive.
Yeah, no, she's probably, listen, in hindsight, do I think that that's who Biden would generally.
You're not getting it. You're going to end up hitting me. Just stop.
No, I got it.
Are you sure?
Pretty sure.
I don't know. All right.
Pretty sure.
But we got lucky. That's how I feel. It could have been bad. It could have been like some milquetoast. It could have been like Kamala. Yes. You know, it could have been somebody like that.
Earl Warren's court, I would agree. Sotomayor is also good. Look, I don't even think I don't even think that Justice Roberts is that bad. But you know,
he's had his decent moments.
You have to look at where the trajectory has been going. Overall, and I would definitely agree with Jen that Clarence Thomas is really where it started.
That's where it started to get bad in terms of like the level of, once you're willing to tolerate somebody being accused of sexual harassment and misconduct, and I say it all the time, this is not a deprivation of life or liberty. You're not entitled to that job.
But this is also the reason why the Democrats are run by the worst of the worst in society, meaning that these are people that are so far above reproach in terms of their lifestyle, in terms of things that matter to them. I am not one to even address the whole circumstance surrounding Christine Blasey Ford and what happened with Brett Kavanaugh, because that is, whether you like it or not, ladies and gentlemen, that is a he said, she said circumstance. What is indisputable is that he was completely incompetent to be on the court. And the fact that the Democrats did not run with the fact that this guy was not capable of being a judge and could have called him out for being the corrupt corporate shill that he is, it's because the system is completely broken and both sides agree with that.
He's one of those that's been being groomed to be in that position,
100%.
basically. But
100%.
my issue with him is, first of all, I think he's disgusting and did all of the things that everybody said he did, because I could totally envision
I
it.
drink beer.
Whatever.
It's like, my
But
God,
the
and that
issue
is-
with
is-
him-
his disposition alone.
That is, see,
It's
this
like-
is the thing. How he presented himself at the hearings, that in and of itself, to me, disqualifies him for being on that court.
100%.
His demeanor and how he responded to things and how he took any sort of responsibility for things, those are the problems. So even if I were to say, yeah, he did those things, but he came out and was like, really took responsibility for it and demonstrated, there was nothing remotely like judicial about the way he conducted himself. Again, I take this seriously. Like, I really think our Supreme Court justices are supposed to be like the best.
They are.
And it's unfortunate. And the fact that someone like him, he looked to me like a belligerent alcoholic. He came off like a belligerent alcoholic at those hearings, which is not the kind of person that you want sitting on the Supreme Court. That is not rational, reasonable, and using good judgment. Also, he's never tried a case, which to me is
That's
just
everything. That's everything.
neither. Coney Island hasn't either.
Shocking.
Yeah. And, even when you look at justices like Justice Kagan, for example, and she did come out of being the president or the dean at Harvard and law and all that. But before that, she was an actual attorney.
Yeah.
And I would also point out that she actually did clerk for Thurgood Marshall.
There is
That to me is cool. So
one can only hope, because again, Biden is going to be there for another 2.5 years. Or am I not
physically or
otherwise-
mentally?
Well, whatever. The point is, if the Democrats were really committed, if they were a party that were not corrupted by corporate interests, they know right now that there is a legitimate scandal surrounding Justice Thomas and his wife, and they absolutely could potentially try to make a power play to try to get him off the court and reduce it to a 5-4 margin, which I do think would actually mitigate a lot of the problems on the court, because I do think that Justice Roberts is actually a fairly moderate Republican overall. And so I think that this is not an Alito, Scalia type situation if you were able to mitigate that problem. But again, this gets back to the fact that Republicans have a bottom-up strategy and the Democrats have a top-down strategy. So that's why these infrastructural problems are an issue. Non-corporate candidates, especially on the left, need to follow the playbook of the GOP and what they do. You need to be winning local offices and establishing an infrastructure like Kim Graham is doing. Wonderful lady. We've had a lot of great local candidates that have come on the show that are not getting a platform. People on the bigger shows, and yes, I'm looking at shows that are on the non-corporate left in politics that are doing what we're doing. Again, Jordan Sheridan, Steve Grumbine.
I would like to say the truth is nobody's doing what we're doing. Just like nobody's doing what Jordan's doing.
But they'll bring on like local candidates that are non-corporate.
Yeah.
You guys, if you're watching this and you know who you are, start thinking about doing that, because those are the people who really need help. Don't worry about people that are necessarily trying to get to Capitol Hill. I mean, that matters, but you have to be very diligent about who you're supporting. We support Nina Turner, not just because she's an amazing candidate. She has financial backing. She is absolutely capable. She's been a state attorney.
State senator.
State senator.
Guy, 100%. And anybody who knows me knows, I'm a Thurgood girl, but yeah, definitely one of the most important influence. And that I've actually oftentimes been very sad about that contrast between him and Thomas, and that what would Thurgood think about that? I don't know. It's very upsetting to me. The whole thing is upsetting.
The sad part is that Thurgood didn't live long after Thomas was put on the court in 90 or 91. So,
But just the quality of human. I'm sorry. I don't care. When you're accused of lechy shit, you don't get to be on the Supreme Court. Like, that shouldn't be a thing.
And a lot of people think that it's just something that you pull out of a hat, but you don't.
I think that it's okay to have high expectations for that particular job. And I don't think you should have to prove anything. I don't think that Christine Blasey Ford should have had to come in and do any of that. I think that
and they really turned her into a freaking martyr. It was so disgusting the way that they put her up there like that.
Well,
and of course,
it was
it's always for
unnecessary.
show, and it's all for show. Just remember, guys, they only like using Christine Blasey Ford because it makes them look good. And if they had to use somebody like Tara Reid, and of course she went against their party, you can't have that because it's all about image. It's all about politics.
And I completely do believe Christine Blasey Ford. But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah. And I believe Tara Reid.
But when you have to have hearings of that nature, and it was the same way I felt about with the Anita Hill hearing. Sure. When you're having to have hearings of that nature as part of a Supreme Court justice approval process, something's way out of whack. Those types of discussions should not. The hearings that we just went through with Justice, is it Jackson or Brown? I keep getting Justice Brown Jackson. That is that's more or less what it should look like. Okay, there shouldn't be accusers coming forward. There shouldn't have to be like backlash against somebody and a me too and he said she said.
This proves how divided our country is.
When that is the basis of your confirmation hearings, you're just not meant to be there. I do not believe people with that level of lech, and even I'm sorry, you just don't belong there.
Well, look, here are the facts, man.
I want clean, smart people.
We were trying to elect the right people in the court. My God, we tried.
I do appreciate this justice.
Yeah.
Don't.
God, I did a good
it's
job,
so gross.
Man. But not Jackson coming on the court. She's a good lady, and we're gonna.
I think we got lucky despite you. You probably really personally have no idea anything about her other than she's a black woman and you needed to find one.
Oh, come on, man.
And fortunately for me and all the people that seem to care about justice, we got lucky and she happens to be a good person for the job.
Look, I only came on because I just wanted to tell people to go to patreon.com/generational, generate with the J, with the change and all that good stuff. And not telling them not that they shouldn't go, but it's very important. And this show's not so bad.
Guys, if you're not patrons, please, and you can, we'd love the support.
Listen.
Somebody's requesting that Bill come.
I can't even begin to talk about it.
Yeah. So, by the way, good appointment, best one since in a really long time.
My God, I did a good thing.
You did a good thing.
But Hunter's innocent, just remember.
Yeah, I'm sure he is.
Totally innocent.
I'm sure he's very innocent.
All right, it's time for bed.
Yeah, go to sleep, Sleepy Joe.
What do they want?
Somebody wanted Bill. Poor Joe, he looks like he did not know where he is at times. He doesn't.
No,
I think he does.
No, it's elder abuse at this point.
I've been thinking that for a while, but Okay, so Sean Hartman texted me. I don't know if he's watching still, but can you please explain the basis for which the president can sign away student debt? I forget the law that was enacted. It has something to do with the loan industry. It has something to do. There's something that was enacted by Congress that makes it so that by executive order he can do that. And you know what? Seriously, Sean, Google it because there is. I forget what the name of it is.
Look, I enacted over 300 executive orders when I was president, and that was a lot of fun and a lot of things that I did to get myself out of trouble. So I would recommend that Joe thinks very long and hard about what he's doing. He could save himself a lot of grief if he was able to help some of these average people. Wouldn't that be a good thing?
Average people, yeah.
I mean, look, I like the fact that he's taken a lot of the heat off of me regarding the 94 crime bill. I was so easily able to be slick Willie,
Don't worry, we blame a lot of things on you. In fact, I was just having a conversation about that the other day, where I think that at least there are at least five things that you did that are causing some of the biggest problems we're having right now. And if my friend Peter were here, he would name them all for you.
Well, I did not ruin this country.
Yeah, NAFTA, crime bill,
I did
Telecommunications
I
Act,
did the
repealing
crime bill.
Glass-Steagall.
I repealed Glass-Steagall. I did
yeah.
pass the Telecom
Yeah,
Act.
those are all things that are really the cause
You
of a
forgot
lot
the
of our.
most important one of all,
I know I'm forgetting something.
normal trade relations with China.
Normal trade relations with China.
That was really great. Almost as great as Monica. There was Paula, there was Jennifer, Hillary's not watching right now, but I don't want to bring up the past or anything like that. Welfare reform, wasn't that
I
wonderful?
think your taste in women leaves a lot to be desired.
I like him at about a 6 or 7, in that range. It's not so bad.
Clearly, you aim low.
Welfare reform. I mean, look, we had to do what we had to do. Them super predators were damn dangerous, and had to get them off the government dole. I mean, we could have given them a living wage, but it was just much easier to throw them in jail. Oh, sorry, I get a little, I get a little ahead of myself, and well, you know how it is. But of course, we had a lot of good times, and I'm still trying to figure out how the hell I'm not in prison. Same with Hillary. We certainly bought off quite a few people, but
I think you did more than buy off people.
yeah, we may have done a thing or two where people were never found again, and
There are certain
we
people that just got
But,
shot in the back of the head and just got dead, and there was no further
I
investigation.
did not pull that trigger, and just like OJ, I'm still searching for the killers
Yeah,
of Vince Foster after all this time.
yeah,
It's going to be the 30-year anniversary next year.
yeah. What happened to Jeffrey Epstein?
He just disappeared.
Yeah, he got Arkancided, didn't he?
I have never heard that term before.
I'll tell you all about Arkancided.
Oh, listen, if you guys like this podcast, go to patreon.com/.
Let's talk about the Clinton Foundation and the people in Haiti.
Well,
we could talk about that.
We're not talking about that here.
You were on the Lolita Express 26 times.
I was never on that plane.
26 times.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Whatever.
I'm going to tell people not to go to that website if you keep indicting me for stuff that I clearly can be proven that never actually happened.
And I guess it depends on what your definition of the word is.
I have certainly made up quite a few definitions in my day. I've certainly destroyed quite a few lives. And I do not inhale, so please do not make me a part of that charade. Patreon.com/generational change. It's a really great website. I think you could do a really great job helping out this show. I know.
Inhale that, Bill.
But of course, a lot of money is never going to be able to be discovered again. And I would definitely recommend people don't try to get in Hillary's way, especially if somebody tries to run for president again in 2024.
You realize I feel like she's got the dark triad of personality traits. You do know what that is.
I'm married to her. Of course I do. It's rubbed off on me in the worst kind
If you
of
guys
way.
haven't seen, we had author Brian Kloss on our show talking about his book Corruptible a while back, and it was great. And one of the things is why we pick the people we pick to be in leadership positions, and why they are people that are narcissistic, Machiavellian, and psychopathic, the dark triad.
Yeah, that really seems to be the order of the day.
Oh, yeah. And why it is in our little monkey primate brains that we elect those kinds of people. That was actually one of my favorite shows we did in terms of that was the only reason I voted for you.
Exactly why.
It's the first time I voted.
Yeah. Just play that, saxophone. And I had the glasses on and everything. It was wonderful. And of course, I fooled.
Why are you saying saxophone?
It's a Simpsons reference.
Oh.
It's all good. And that was at the same time, 1992.
I didn't realize you were a Simpsons fan.
I'm a big Simpsons
Oh,
fan.
for God's sake, that actually explains a lot to me.
I was on The Simpsons once playing a saxophone. I bet you didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
Well, now you know.
Well, you were always sort of a media whore.
Well, I do love the attention. It's always,
Just a whore.
It's just done very good things for me over time. But that said, it's nice to see you all. And remember, patreon.com/generational change.
Guys, check us out. And if you haven't hit the like button, hit the like button.
Hit that like button.
We're very suppressed. We're doing the best we can. And guys, check out our back stuff. We've got amazingly good backlogs of guests and stuff. Check it out. And a lot of it is stuff that isn't timely. We do timely things, but a lot of the things that we have, like experts, guests, authors, it's still relevant stuff. So check out our little library. We have quite a little podcast library that we've built up.
That's really wonderful. Nice to see you all. I'll see you again soon.
Yeah.
And the last thing we will mention is that on Wednesday, our next podcast coming up, We are going to be doing, I think we'll be doing a crossover. We will find out. But first.
Wait. No. On Wednesday, you mean next Wednesday?
No, this Wednesday.
This Wednesday? Okay.
So in 2 days, we're going to be doing what I consider to be a GOP sort of focus show.
I think we shouldn't do labels. I think we should just approach it like we're going to be speaking with people that are outside of our general sphere, political sphere.
So for those of you who may or may not know, Jen's home away from home is Asheville, North Carolina. And it just so happens that that particular congressional district, North Carolina is 11th, I believe. It is a red district. I think it's like a +9 or +10.
So it's red, but there's red and then there's douchebag red.
So in this case, you have one of the absolute worst representatives in the whole nation. And of course, it just so happens to be in Asheville, one of the most liberal bastions in the United States. And of course, it's Madison Cawthorn. So Madison is being primaried by a wonderful lady. Well, we'll find out if she's wonderful or not. We'll see.
I've heard good things.
Wendy Navarez. She is I think she's a constitutional Republican. I think it could be a very good conversation. And then we're going to have an interesting crossover with Sean Fitzgerald he is the actual Justice Warrior. Some of you may be familiar with his stuff. He has a very comedic approach to his style, which is fun.
Scat, you're a good kind of troll. I like you.
Yeah.
See, we thought that was a troll.
For sure.
No, Scat's a good troll.
So it'll be a fun show. And then, of course, next week, we haven't set Monday yet, but Wednesday, 420, we are having a special 420 show.
And we're going to do it at 4, guys.
Yes. I think Bo might be available. He said he's checking out. So we'll see. That'd be great.
Wait. But and I will take him whenever, however, because I love him. Yeah. But I don't think he's a partaker.
Maybe not.
I know he's a supporter of the concept. He's, a very liberal and let live kind of guy. But oh my God, I love Bo. Yeah. For people who don't know, Bo of the 5th column.
He's something special.
I love him. And it's BEAU, Bo of the 5th column. And
we go live at 8 o'clock on Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesday will be 8. We went early because, Steve and the 9 kids and,
Got to do what we got to do.
9 kids.
Yeah, he's definitely central Pennsylvania, that's for sure.
It's a lot of kids.
Yeah, that's a lot of kids.
That's a lot of kids,
That's a lot of kids, man. That's a carbon footprint.
Well, here's the thing that I think. Once the amount of kids you have, and I've known, just different women with different broods all over the place, but once you're in the category where you need to have a special vehicle that doesn't qualify as a minivan, once you need to have a vehicle besides a minivan to transport your family, you've reached the boundaries of, to me, what is reasonable in terms of being able to manage. That's just me. Once you've had to get a super car, like one of those customs or those transit vans, or once you're having to do that to me is outside the realm of my possible mindset.
And on that note, we'll see you Wednesday.